Welcome to Mission Minute News. I'm Dominican Sister Jean Harris. First, the headlines. Pope consecrates Ukraine and Russia to Mary. Theological significance of the consecration. SVD SSPS update in Ukraine. Around the mission world. Pope to meet with Canadian indigenous. Water management begins at home. And COP26 dust has settled. Pope consecrates Ukraine and Russia to Mary. Pope Francis led an act of consecration of Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary on the Feast of the Annunciation, Friday, March 25th, at St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican. Toward the end of the 24 Hours for the Lord Lenten penitential service, the Pope prayed the act of consecration of humanity, especially of Russia and Ukraine, to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. In his homily at the service, Pope Francis reflected on humanity's need for God's forgiveness and on the meaning of the consecration. This is no magic formula, but a spiritual act. It is an act of complete trust on the part of children who, amid the tribulation of this cruel and senseless war that threatens our world, turn to their mother, reposing all their fears and pain in her heart and abandoning themselves to her. The war, added the Pope, reminds us of our helplessness and our inadequacy, as well as our need for the closeness of God and the certainty of His forgiveness. God alone, he said, can eliminate evil, disarm resentment, and restore peace to our hearts. Pope Francis recalled that God chose the Virgin Mary to change history by beginning a new story of salvation and peace. If we want the world to change, then first our hearts must change. The Pope concluded that Mary's response to God's invitation was a lively desire to obey God. May she now take our own journey into her hands. May she guide our steps through the steep and arduous paths of fraternity and dialogue along the way of peace. Earlier in the week, the Apostolic Nuncio to the United States, Archbishop Christophe Pierre, sent an urgent letter to the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops revealing that Pope Francis intended to invite all Catholic bishops and priests around the world to join this act of consecration of Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The consecration text was disseminated in the various languages with the request that the countries join in the prayer at exactly the same time as 5 p.m. in Rome, begging God in unison for the protection of both countries and deliverance from war. In addition to joining the worldwide prayer, the diplomatic corps in Washington, D.C. gathered in Eucharist, led by Cardinal Wilton Gregory, Archbishop, in the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. The Pope's renewal of the consecration came both in response to the war in Ukraine and at the request of the Blessed Mother herself in the Fatima apparition of July 13, 1917. Theological significance of the consecration. Following the consecration of Russia and Ukraine to Mary's Immaculate Heart on March 25th, Father Stefano Ketchen, OFM, Mariologist and president of the International Pontifical Marian Academy, explained that peace is always born from God and therefore conforms to the heart of Mary, who loves God immensely. As children turn to their mother in time of need, he said, so humankind entrusts itself to Mary, Queen of Peace, in the midst of the storm of war unleashed a month ago by Russia on Ukraine. To Mary, we consecrate the future of the whole human family, the needs and expectations of every people, the anxieties and hopes of the world. The consecration follows a tradition that has always looked to Our Lady as the one to whom we can entrust ourselves in times of trial. In an interview with Vatican News, Father Stefano pointed to the theological significance of this consecration. To find peace, we must conform to the heart of Mary, a heart that loves immensely, he said. Recalling a meeting with the Holy Father in October 2020 with a group of teachers and students of the Marianum Pontifical Theological Faculty in Rome, Father Stefano said that the Pope had invited them to remain always attentive to the signs of the Marian times that run through our era. Father Stefano concludes that the Pope's decision to renew the consecration at this historic moment stems precisely from this attention. When there are wars in a family, one entrusts oneself to the Mother. SVD SSPS update in Ukraine. Divine Word missionaries continue to work at 3 parishes in western Ukraine. So far, they have not been bombed and have been helping refugees fleeing the violence in other parts of the country. Thanks to the help of the Poland province, which oversees the mission in Ukraine, and the generosity of many, they have enough food and medicine. At the outset of the Russian invasion, one of these priests, Father Jerzy Zarnicki, was in Poland. Despite the danger, Father returned to Ukraine to be with his parishioners in Nova Ozhika. The other 2 missionaries, Father Wojciech Volti in Verbowitz and Father Adam Kuczynski in Struga, have not thought of leaving the country. Father Zolti has converted a retreat center into a shelter for refugees. Holy Spirit missionary sisters working nearby are helping at the shelter, which has received 37 refugees. Father Zolti leads prayer services for Catholics and Orthodox Christians alike, seeking an end to the war. So far, there have been no casualties among the Divine Word and Holy Spirit missionaries in Ukraine. They invite everyone to pray for peace in Ukraine. So we ask prayers for their safety, for the safety of all in Ukraine, and for a swift end to this unjust war. Around the mission world, SVD Poland. In recent days, Poland and Slovakia sent a large delivery of aid to Wierzbowik in Ukraine, where parish buildings can store and distribute items successfully. I would like to thank Caritas of the Elka Diocese with its director priest Dariusz Kuczynski and Bishop Ordinary Jerzy Mazur, SVD, reports Wojciech Ololti, SVD, parish priest. This is an invaluable help for everyone here, refugees and workers. Father Wojciech explains that his parish retreat center is currently providing shelter to 30 people, mainly women and children, from the surrounding areas of Donetsky, Kharkiv, and Kiev, who have nowhere else to go. Since the war began, about 70 people have passed through the center. New Look Optical Center. 25 years after it was established, the New Look Optical Center in SVD Ghana province is getting a new clinic and a new location in Yendi of northeast Ghana. This location will allow us to reach more people, said Brother Andrzej Kedra, SVD, who initiated the original New Look Optical Center in June 1997, along with Father Joseph Mazer, SVD. The temporary location was in St. Charles Luanga Parish in Saboba. The New Look Optical Center has the mission of providing eyeglasses at a low cost to the people of Ghana. Besides treating patients in Saboba, the work involves driving patients to other towns to see eye care professionals, including an ophthalmologist in Boku, which is nearly 250 miles north of Saboba. The most challenging period was the last 8 years, Brother Kedra said, as their equipment aged and needed endless repair, and their lack of a car limited their activities. Nevertheless, the project did survive and is currently developing. Mission in Myanmar. Father Thuyen Nguyen, SVD, continues his mission in Myanmar despite the danger that has existed since the military seized power and placed the legitimate president of the country under arrest. Father Thuyen has started a second decent housing project for the poorest and has already completed 10 houses. Similar to Habitat International, beneficiaries of the dwellings must provide labor. Father Thuyen's social initiative surely deserves a lot of prayer. Garden Project in Hungary Province. This is a program by Father Albert Ngamba Mangwala, SVD, and Father Marcos Antonio Miranda, SVD. We buy the seeds and plants and distribute them to gypsy families. Our aim is to encourage them to make a garden for themselves so that they can harvest vegetables in the summer. We also want parents to set a good example for their children, so we want to motivate our confreres who work in the parishes to start the gypsy ministry, shares Father Albert. Lenten Youth Retreat. On March 20th, 2022, a gathering of 71 migrant youth participants experienced the Migrant Youth Retreat at SVD Seminary in Goa, India, with Father Michael Pereira and the SVD community. Fantastic job, inspirational work, and a meaningful experience for the youth. God bless them all. Pope to meet with Canadian indigenous. On March 23rd, the Holy See Press Office announced that Pope Francis would meet individually with several different delegations of Canadian indigenous peoples, along with their bishops during the following week. The Pope would be listening to their personal testimonies of the legacy of the so-called residential schools. The Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops said that the three major groups to be represented were the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, recognized in Canada's Constitution Act of 1982. Métis and Inuit meetings would occur on Monday, March 28th, and First Nations on Thursday, March 31st. Then on Friday, the 1st of April, Pope Francis would address all three delegations, along with representatives of the Bishops' Conference. President of the conference, Bishop Raymond Poisson, said, "With this delegation, we hope to walk together in a new way, to listen with humility, and to discern the next steps that the Church can take to support residential school survivors, their families, and their communities." The meetings had been originally scheduled for December 2021, but were postponed due to the surge in COVID cases in Italy. Water management begins at home. Richard Connor, editor-in-chief of the UN's World Water Development Report, encouraged sustainable use of water and its resources ahead of the annual World Water Day on March 22nd, with special attention to groundwater. Connor invites all persons to be conscious about their use of water in order to protect and manage this essential resource. Saving water might seem to be a small thing, but it is actually big when everybody does their part. When you are saving water, you are not just protecting the lake or the stream in your neighborhood. You're doing much more than that for ecosystems, for the climate, and for the planet. The annual observance of World Water Day draws attention to the over 2 billion people currently living without access to safe water, particularly the poorest around the world. The water crisis is particularly pronounced in areas of sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia, where many people do not have access to safe water. A major aspect of this crisis, Connor notes, is sanitation, as an estimated 4 billion people have no access to safe sanitation facilities, with over 800 million still practicing open defecation. Figures that would say we have a long way to go to meet the UN's Sustainable Development Goals for water and sanitation. The theme for World Water Day 2022 was groundwater, making the invisible visible. The theme shines a light on groundwater, which exists in aquifers and saturated zones beneath the land surface. Groundwater is one of our most valuable resources, even though we probably never see it or realize it's there. Hence the theme, making the invisible visible. Connor explains that groundwater is the major affordable source of water in many rural populations and plays a crucial role in the development of these communities. Therefore, it is important to ensure that it is made available at an affordable price or for free. Even in cities, the reliance on groundwater is increasing, with roughly 50% of urban populations now relying on groundwater. COP26 dust has settled. What exactly did the Worldwide Conference of the Parties, COP, number 26, last fall on climate change, actually accomplish? Environmental Defense Fund President Fred Krupp gives us a good summary in the winter edition of EDF's Solutions magazine. First and foremost, this COP, with its 197 attending nations, agreed that climate change is what the lead Chinese delegate called an existential threat to all, making the need for progress more urgent than ever. Second, on methane gas reduction, more than 100 countries pledged to cut methane emissions by at least 30% by the end of this decade. Third, on deforestation, the LEAF organization, Lowering Emissions by Accelerating Forest Finance, announced it had mobilized an initial $1 billion to reduce deforestation. Fourth, the promotion of sustainable jet fuel for airplanes is well underway through the Sustainable Aviation Buyers Alliance. Of note, airplanes emit 10 times the carbon dioxide of all the other means of transportation. Fifth, and perhaps most significantly, countries reached agreement on the rules needed to govern carbon markets, thereby enabling wealthy nations to reduce emissions faster while funding developing nations to preserve tropical forests and build renewable energy facilities, among other vital methods of slowing down catastrophic climate events. Yes, these 5 outcomes of COP26 are complicated and the processes complex, concludes Krupp. But along with the nonprofit involvement of groups like EDF, we are genuinely moving toward a vision of a vital earth for everyone. Or in the words of Pope Francis, greater care for our common home. A positive metaphor for white privilege. A Franciscan priest offers a new metaphor directed to white Catholics to awaken their understanding and possible ownership of racial privilege. Father Daniel Horan, OFM, professor of philosophy, religious studies, and theology at St. Mary's College, Notre Dame, Indiana, has grown tired of the Mr. Nice Guy approach to helping white folks in his church admit their racial biases. As an example of the overprotective approach, Father Horan cites the current push in the state of Florida to enact laws shielding people from feeling discomfort in discussions about racism, past and present. Father Horan says that when whites are confronted with facts about systemic racism, the reaction often is either evasion, not my fault, or rage, don't you dare blame me. These are examples of the white fragility named by author and sociologist Robin DiAngelo, or the white rage named by historian Carol Anderson. So when Father Daniel was approached by Ave Maria Press to write a book on racism and privilege for a Catholic audience, he hesitated, thinking about his own credibility as white, male, ordained, and religious. Could he ever speak authentically on the subject, much less motivate readers to change? The result was A White Catholic's Guide to Racism and Privilege, published last September. Speaking engagements have followed, but he finds that very often well-intentioned white people struggle with or outright reject the very concept of white privilege, first popularized in a now classic 1989 article by women's studies professor Peggy McIntosh at Wellesley College. In his own life, Father Horan had already been sensitized to the term privilege based on gender, class, education, nation of birth, and religious tradition. But in 2010, when he led an undergraduate seminar about privilege based on race, he encountered considerable resistance among the white students. Many thought whites as a group could be considered privileged, benefiting materially from their whiteness. But individually, whites might well experience prejudice themselves based on other identities like class, gender, sexual orientation, and ability, physical or mental. How could they be considered privileged? Some analysts illustrate the privilege with metaphors that project an absence of some oppression, obstacle, or threat. But Father Daniel has come up with a metaphor that directly and positively paves the way, pun intended, for special treatment: the snowplow. White privilege is the snowplow on a 2-lane road after a heavy snowfall. One lane is plowed and clear, ready for smooth passage. The other is snow-covered and treacherous, with plenty of obstacles, difficulty, and struggle. White privilege is the plow ahead of the whites, clearing away obstacles, threats, and indignities that people of color face on a daily basis, trudging through the bitter snowfalls of racism, the fear for their children, having to speak for an entire racial group, immediate distrust by whites, even if they're professional, racialized suspicion, violence, dismissal, and erasure. And the snowplow is clearly and universally on the white side of the road, regardless of their other identifying factors. If you have a comment or question about any of our stories, please email us at missionminutenews@wordnet.tv. You can also post your comments below each video on YouTube. We promise to respond. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon. Share with others about the channel and the variety of programs you enjoy there. Please join us every Wednesday for our online Eucharist and Adoration and Benediction of the Blessed Sacrament, starting at 11 a.m. Pacific Time. You can always catch it later on YouTube if that time isn't good for you. Send us your prayer requests or intentions for Eucharist by contacting us by phone at 909-383-4333 or send an email to mail@wordnet.tv. This is Mission Minute News. Until we meet again, stay safe and well, and may Jesus' love for you make you smile.